IndyCar's delayed 2020 season opener at Texas Motor Speedway was the closest guide yet to how this year's global events will impact the on-track product and wider atmosphere when Formula One finally begins next month. A single chassis formula racing on an oval is not a precise match for F1, but IndyCar's status as a major international single-seater series has given us more to consider following NASCAR's return to racing in May. There was much that was familiar about the Texas race, a Scott Dixon Ganassi victory with Penske in pursuit, but also more that was different than you might have expected. Here are some elements that stood out to us and what they could indicate for when F1 returns in Austria. Make sure you let us know what you think about F1's impending return, and remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel. F1's sometimes irritating ability to be close to perfection often squashes any hope of unexpected variables in strange circumstances. But Texas was a hint that predictions of plenty of incidents in Austria may not be wide of the mark. While the IndyCar race day was hardly wall-to-wall chaos, there were constant signs of rustiness as teams and drivers were thrown back into action after a prolonged spell on the sidelines. Unsurprisingly, there were crashes in practice, and Takuma Sato couldn't even race after crashing in qualifying. The slip in traffic that put potential winner Felix Rosenqvist into the wall was another error that might have been avoided had 2020 been playing out normally. Pit stop incidents were commonplace too, with things going awry in stops for Penske, Andretti, Dale Coyne Racing and Rahal Letterman Lanigan. Setup outcomes were all over the place, even for the top teams. Penske drivers Joseph Newgarden and Simon Pagenaud ended up second and third, but both felt they'd gone way off course with their setups and in totally different ways. Things shouldn't be quite as fraught on that front for F1, where the schedule will be much closer to that of a conventional weekend rather than the one-day events we've seen in US racing so far. IndyCar's layoff was much longer than F1's too. It hasn't raced since last September, and its only full-field pre-season test was weather disrupted. The 2019 F1 season only finished on the 1st of December, and teams had 6 busy days of pre-season running at the end of February. F1 teams also have longer to prepare in their reopened factories before heading to their first race. But the margin for error in F1 is even narrower than that in IndyCar, and teams will still be coming to Austria cold without the months of continuous preparation and in-competition practice they're used to. Drivers will be out of the groove in a way most have never experienced before in their careers. Texas showed how that cumulative rust can play out when the pressure is on, and it will clearly have an impact in Austria as well. One driver seemingly rust-proof was Texas winner Scott Dixon. Fastest in practice, on provisional pole until Newgarden's big effort, and then untouchable for the majority of the race. When he lost the lead through a slower pit stop than his rivals, he nailed a restart to pass Ganassi teammate Rosenqvist, then put a brilliant move on Newgarden to retake control of the race. Even when Rosenqvist was catching him later on, he stayed unflappable in heavy traffic. It was a flawless drive from one of IndyCar's greats that showed what's possible if you hit the ground running when others need time to find their feet. The best drivers on the F1 grid will be looking to steal a march in a similar way. Ganassi clearly had really strong oval pace, which was a priority over the winter given its patchy 2019 form on those tracks. That suggests that massive disruption to this year doesn't have to derail the specific work a team or driver put in over the winter. In F1 terms, that's an important pointer for Valtteri Bottas and Charles Leclerc. Bottas said he made changes to his driving style and other processes that he felt were better in testing, but then didn't get the chance to find out in a race. Leclerc said tyre management was a winter priority for him, but he's yet to find out exactly how much progress he's made. So can they pick up where they left off and put the gains they felt they'd made in testing straight into action at the Red Bull Ring? How effectively they do so could make or break their title bids. An all Ganassi and Penske top 3 suggests the opposite, but there were smaller scale upsets throughout the day at Texas. In the frantic single-day schedule, those that got their heads down and executed smoothly were rewarded, whether that was for superior preparation, a calmer approach, or some decent setup guesswork. The rarely heralded Zach Veach was Andretti Autosport's star turn, AJ Foyt was a front runner with Charlie Kimball in particular, and Carlin got only its third top 6 finish in IndyCar with Connor Daly. The underdog upset factor will be smaller in F1. By running a conventional weekend, there will still be plenty of time to analyse data from practice, and by race day, teams should be closer to their optimum. IndyCar teams were also adapting on the hoof to the increased weight of the aero screen and its effect on oval setups, and dealing with an impromptu tyre combination. Firestone was denied the chance to prepare the rubber it wanted for this track due to the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. F1 won't have these unknown quantities, and the competitive gap between its haves and have-nots is far greater than we see in IndyCar. An upset in Austria is more likely to come in the form of an unusual Class B winner than one of those underdog teams getting among the outright top 6. But the start of the season is often the best chance for the smaller teams to cause an upset, and that opportunity should be even greater when F1 gets to Austria. The sight of 3 cars, 2 from Andretti and 1 from Rahal, struggling to fire up properly and join the start of the IndyCar race due to an ECU issue was the most obvious manifestation of rustiness from the extended gap. Cars and engines haven't run for months, testing was a long time ago, and the build-up has been disjointed and restricted due to factories being closed. That means cars have been sat idle for longer, and teams have had less time than usual to spend getting them race ready. Even if F1 has more chance to iron these glitches out in practice, teams could well lose a lot of mileage as they do so, and high pressure situations like a race start or pit stops are very hard to replicate before the real thing. It won't take much to put you on the back foot, and there could be some small gremlins with big consequences. The vast empty grandstands and sparsely populated Texas paddock were an eerie sight. It felt just how it looked, empty. The on-track racing is the main thing, but emotion is a big part of the spectacle, and the lack of atmosphere was obvious. F1 doesn't rely on its crowd for atmosphere in the same way a sport like football does, but one of the defining images of the Austrian Grand Prix in recent years has been the gradual takeover of grandstands by Max Verstappen's Orange Army, who will be missed at several races this year. There will be other moments during the weekend when the loss of atmosphere is telling. For example, don't expect to see Lewis Hamilton throwing himself into his team's arms in Parc Fermé should he win. Celebrations and commiserations will have to be strangely distant. Dixon's domination and the difficulty in overtaking on the higher line at Texas made this quite a dull race at times. Most of the wheel-to-wheel action came from the field being closed up by a mid-race caution for debris. F1 bosses are mindful of this, hence the push to shake up repeat events at the same circuit. Reverse grids were blocked by Mercedes, but Ross Brawn says there are other less disruptive ideas in the works. There's been a very long wait for F1 to return, and there's a large captive audience waiting for it. The openers proving dull and repetitive would waste the opportunity that exists here. One common theme in IndyCar and NASCAR races so far has been how live interviews are conducted on TV. Drivers wear face masks, with the camera crew and interviewer stood a safe distance back. Drivers have commented on it feeling strange to celebrate victories in front of empty grandstands, and it takes some time to get used to watching it as well. F1 has another month to work out how to handle this, so it will be interesting to see if it gets creative. It also has an easier schedule to work with over a 3-day event, so there won't be the same time pressures on the drivers that we've seen in America. Even if what F1 comes up with feels strange at first, with so many races in quick succession, we'll get used to it pretty quickly. At times, the on-track action will need to be shot differently as well. Panning away to show the big grandstands at a busy racetrack can add a lot to the broadcast, and on US Racing's return, those angles have been interesting to show how different closed-door events look. But it didn't feel like IndyCar tried to make any efforts here to shoot the race differently to get around the empty stands. In F1, at least the lack of fans removes any possibility of the TV director cutting away from exciting on-track action to show us another crowd reaction. It would be naive for broadcasters to airbrush away the realities of live sport in 2020 under these unprecedented circumstances, but that shouldn't prevent some innovative thinking about ways to cover the action in a different way. As we count down to the long-awaited start of the 2020 F1 season, what are you looking forward to? And are there any elements of its return that you're concerned about? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel.